Hello, this presentation will be about the soundtrack to the popular game Hollow Knight. Specifically, I'll be talking about the malleable nature of thematic music, which allows themes to be used in multiple environments and evolve with the plot. Before I start though, here is a bit of background information. Hollow Knight is a 2D platformer action-adventure game created in 2017. The score was composed by Christopher Larkin. The general plot, or at least what matters for this analysis, is that the main character, called the Knight, roams an abandoned underground civilization of bugs called Hallownest. Each world, as I'll call it, has distinct features like mushrooms, plants, crystals, praying mantises, and much more. The instrumentation of each world is one of the most significant ways Larkin evokes the feelings of being in each environment. The transformation of themes is second to the vibe of the world. So, in other words, rather than the orchestration being dependent on the variation of the theme is the result of the orchestration. There's an even mix between acoustic and electronic instruments. However, it sounds, for the most part, to be composed using sound libraries in a digital audio workstation with some live recordings for solos. However, I could be wrong, and the soundtrack may have been mixed in a way that makes it sound the way it does. The music generally follows common practice and conventions, but pop conventions are also evident in some tracks. So, there are two approaches to thematic material that I want to explore here. The first is related to environments, and the second to plots. In the first section, I'll be giving two examples that show themes being associated with neighboring worlds, or worlds that somehow are related to each other. The second part, we'll be looking at the main theme that is associated with a character and is used to support the plot. Now, these themes, as we'll see, are very flexible, and they need to be because games are not a single static moment. The player's decisions, whether predictable or unpredictable, mean that different outcomes are necessary, which is why different music is needed. However, having a consistent item a player can orally hang on to helps keep the music contained in the story, while still giving the composer freedom to explore wildly different styles. As we'll see, the malleable nature of these themes tends to mean they are simple, which in turn makes them more memorable. The simpler something is, the easier it is for the brain or voice to imitate it, and therefore latches into their memory faster. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we'll see that the key to manipulating a theme is always to retain at least one element of the original theme to act as a signal to the listener. This can be any element of the theme, like the rhythm, the pitches, or the contour, which isn't the same as pitches because it involves transpositions. In the first part, we will be covering themes used across different worlds. The first theme we'll be looking at is from the track Dirt Myth. This is the above ground world that the character first lands in. We are presented with a theme in E minor with a progression that stays on E minor for the first half and then uses two common pop chords, the 7 and the 6, in the second half. The progression isn't a standard one, but the feelings of a period structure are still present. So first you have two halves that start with the same motive, and although the melody doesn't begin on a chord tone, the last measure still acts as a leading tone of sorts, by being a half step that leads back down to the F sharp in the beginning. The static harmony and the downbeats of the melody being non-chord tones allows for different harmonic rhythms and progressions in the future. The rhythmic motion in the melody is also slow. The lack of fast rhythms allows for the theme to be diminished, to add diminutions to, or to be distorted. There are also fragments with distinct features. For example, the quarter note triplet is distinctive because of its rhythmic value and its contour. The 2-3-4-2 contour can be transposed, yet still signal back to the original because the stepwise motion is preserved. So here's the antecedent. And now the consequent. And that G leaves us hanging, which makes the F-sharp return feel like a resolution, even though it is a major second away from the root. And now if we skip forward a bit, hear that even in the first track, the theme is already varied by changing the notes yet keeping the contour and rhythmic identity of the original. Now, here's the variation of the Dartmouth theme used in the third or second below ground world discovered by the player. The key is the same, but the time signature is now in 3/4. The harmonic rhythm is also faster by using a sequence of up, 2, down, 3. In this case, it seems like the harmony is what dictated the melody rather than the other way around, which is why the consequent is a major second down. But still, it preserves the contour and, to an extent, the original rhythm. The second time, the melody moves to a higher register, and even though the harmonic rhythm stays the same, it feels faster, because the tie is dropped. The emphasis is now on every 3 beats rather than on every 6 beats or groups of 2 measures. In this case, the rhythmic identity is lost, and only the contour is left to grasp onto the original melody. More interest is added by adding a single bass note to the ostinato to create a grouping dissonance, or a 6/8 feel. So after a brief introduction with a loop, we get the melody. As you can see, the period is still kept, and the second half is just transposed down a major second. Now a bit later, we get a 6/8 feel, and the return of the melody in the upper clarinet. The theme keeps the 3/4 feel rather than conform to the 6/8 feel, which causes some rhythmic interest. This would be preferred to some melodic interest that would be more distracting to the player. You could also argue that this variation doesn't come from the Dartmouth theme, but rather the main theme because of its contour, but I think that the 5 and sharp 6 in the third and fourth bar hint more towards the Dartmouth theme than it does towards the other theme, even though this one goes down a major second and not a third in that iconic contour we talked about. The City of Tears is about a third of the way into the game. It's an important location that gets a cutscene that is important to the plot. This is reinforced by introducing a new melody to mark the location's importance. It's pretty apparent that there is a clear melody with the use of a solo soprano voice. I only have the first 4 bars marked here because that is the main iconic motive that's used in the next track we'll talk about, which is the Soul Sanctum. The City of Tears theme appears in an area called the Soul Sanctum, which is a sort of section of the City of Tears. The organ, which has the appropriate connotation for souls and haunted places, places the tune amongst an ostinato that doesn't change harmonies, which causes the theme to sound muddled and clashes harmonically with that pedal you hear. Now the reason why I only chose 4 measures of the City of Tears to highlight was because that represents the main contour that is used over and over, which is, as you can hear now, going down, skip up, and then back a step down. Step down, step down, step down, skip up, and then steps down. In the second part, we'll be looking at themes used for emotional purposes, which is a part of plot progression. We'll be looking at the main theme associated with the main character, which appears at the beginning, the end, and critical fight scenes. Once again, using a period structure is useful when creating thematic material because of its repetitive nature. Constructing the consequent is basically creating the first variation of the tune, or what would be the antecedent. This is effective at validating and making comfortable to the listener any fragmentation or variation of the theme being used in different contexts, because it no longer sounds foreign. And also because it takes the flashy nature of hearing variations out of the foreground and into the background, maintaining the player's focus on the actual gameplay while passively hearing the music and forming continuity in their brain. The first time we hear this is in the piece Enter Hallownest, which introduces the story's turmoil, drama, and action while repeating the theme over different harmonic progressions. This initiates the memorability of the theme. We're skipping one version, which comes before the next one we're going to talk about, which is Broken Vessel. This is played during a fight against the main character's duplicate. The music reinforces the fact that the player is fighting against a being created from the same source as the main character, and this broken vessel has unfortunately succumbed to some sort of infection, and therefore is fighting the main character. The next is towards the end of the game. Sealed Vessel is a lengthy track played during the fighting sequence with the Hollow Knight, one of the big main bosses at the end, who's fighting not only the main character, but also with himself. Ultimately, he tries to kill himself. The track shifts into repetition of a fragment of the theme against an unresolving progression, whose rhythm resembles Handel's Sarabande in D minor, evoking some sort of feeling of death and despair. A smaller string ensemble makes it sound more close, intimate, sentimental, and intensive, and yet emotional, which is usually the connotation strings have. Finally, the theme is in its purest form in the track Hollow Knight. It is played towards the end and evokes the emptiness of the abandoned civilization and the aftermath of the story's events through the sparse instrumentation and heavy reverb. Here, we'll be starting with the final track, the original theme. You can hear and see that it is similar in construction to the Dartmouth theme. The first half is harmonically static, and then in the second half, the phrase ends on a predominant harmony. In this case, rather than a significant rhythm or non-diatonic tone, a non-diatonic chord will signal this theme when it occurs in other tracks. Here, the rhythm and melody are kept the same. Although the theme is augmented, so is the tempo, which means it will still sound the same. However, the harmonic rhythm is also different, and once again, there is a unique non-diatonic chord, which, in this case, is that Neapolitan 6. Here, the harmony is completely static, and the bass serves as an ostinato that provides motion, while the lyrical cello line provides sentiment. Here, the rhythm is completely changed, the theme is still recognizable by its contour. Finally, in the Sarabande version, only the first two bars of the original are repeated over and over to raise the suspense of the scene. This is reinforced by the harmonic progression, which refuses to arrive at a root tonic chord. In this case, the rhythm and contour are preserved while the pitch is changed to work with the harmony. Although the main theme is used for plot reinforcement, it also appears in the fungal waste world for atmospheric purposes. The theme is transposed to E minor, much like the other worlds we've discussed, and also uses the theme in 4/4 rather than 3/4. The theme is in the pizzicato strings and also fragmented. The lack of sustained notes because of the nature of pizzicato, and also the extra space between fragments, lets the theme hide within the accompaniment. The harmonic progression is also less of a progression and more of a loop, although there are a few bass notes here and there suggesting motion. And so we have reached the end. To wrap things up, themes in Hollow Knight are used for two main reasons: to create consistency across different environments, and to reinforce story development. To achieve this, themes have to be flexible to fit to the many parameters that exist in games. So, when constructing thematic music for games, some things to keep in mind are to use a period structure with simple components and always maintaining at least one element of the original while feeling free to manipulate any and all others. And that concludes my presentation on thematic music in Hollow Knight. Thank you for watching and listening, and I hope this can be of some use when thinking about video game music construction in the future.